Peace to the family. This is Brother Polight, and we about to connect. It's myself here and my brother King Los.
You know the vibes.
Gave us a house call, and we're gonna be on Clubhouse app, building.
Yeah, man, we're about to do a brief build, man.
We in the Gibbs. Yeah, I'm open for questions. Open.
Yeah, so we open for questions right now, y'all. Okay, Ink, let's get it.
Oh yeah, what over it? So my question was, like I've been following you for a while, watching your mentors on growth and stuff like that. So my question was, what type of strategies and techniques do you use when goal setting?
When doing what? What strategies do I use for what?
When you set goals, basically
For setting goals. Goal
Oh,
setting.
for setting goals? That's a good question.
You hold this and I'll film you.
Oh, okay, great. Let me sit on this side. Okay, so when it comes to setting goals, it depends on what the goal is. So I'll just start building until I find myself in the question. It's a pretty wide question, and I like it. Don't really get asked that question too much. But what I like to do, it's all about diet for me. So I incorporate a lot of things that people don't consider to be part of the diet. And here's an example. I'm gonna take you into the world where I call the therapist the rapist, right? Because the therapist is the rapist because he wants to sit down with you, listen to how you feel, and then he realizes he can't get what he wants out of you idealistically because of your so-called symptoms. So in order to get what he wants out of you, he has to date rape you. He has to give you some pills, some prescriptions, and then the next time you come back off those prescriptions, oh yeah, I like you now. You're doing things the way I need you to do it.
Right.
Now, I remember your question. And so I want to talk to you about diet and how fundamental diet is and how integral it is. So I'm using the therapist, which when you look at the word therapist, is the rapist. It's spelled the same way. All right. So whether it's a semantic or not, the human body isn't designed to lie. It tells the truth first. So we see that in a lot of the words. Right? What you need?
No, I'm just switching angles. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So the reason why I say this is, let's say someone is suffering from anxiety. Let's say someone is suffering from depression. Let's say someone is suffering from suicidal thoughts or tendencies, right? We then turn around and say, oh, they might need Celexa, they might need Risperdal, they might need one of these medications. So the therapist will listen to you and then say, okay, this person needs these drugs. But unbeknown to many people, you can exhibit the same symptoms that represent anxiety, extreme anxiety, suicide, depression, ADD, ADHD, dissociative identity disorder. You can exhibit these same symptoms if you're B12 deficient or if you're D3 deficient. And so no one ever says, hey, let's give people a hair mineral analysis. Let's check people's vitamin and mineral levels before we start suggesting that they take drugs. Now, what does this have to do with my ambition, and what does this have to do with my goals or some of the prerequisite things or prerequisite steps that I take towards being accomplished? Well, I incorporate sun as part of my diet. So it's funny, we get a food pyramid, right? And anytime you see a sun on top of a pyramid, you start thinking about the Illuminati. But in actuality, the food pyramid, the head of a food pyramid at its apex should be the sun. And that has nothing to do with the Illuminati. The sun should be our primary source of food before we start consuming anything. And the reason why I say that is because D3, we only hear about vitamin D, but it's D2 and it's D3. D2 is produced by plants and D3 is produced by animals. We only can get D3 primarily from the sun, as we're part of the animal kingdom. So it doesn't mean to consume flesh when we need vitamin D3 from animals. It's to simply say we are animals of the animal kingdom, and D3 is produced upon sun exposure. So even when you look at the word vitamin, a semantic as you will, you see vita as in vitality and amen as in the sun god. So we get our vitality from the sun. You walk with me? So the food that we need to consume isn't necessarily always vegetables and fruits. The food we need to consume primarily is get enough sunlight, because when you're D3 deficient, D3 is produced upon sun exposure. When you D3 deficient, you could become depressed. You become over anxious. You could become distracted or lacking focus. So the prerequisite step to me accomplishing any of my goals would be to first and foremost make sure I incorporate sun as an integral part of my diet. I understand it plays an integral role in my diet, and then I make sure I start consuming it. So that's one. Two is...
And the sun to be electric, right?
The sun what?
I said, and well, from my understanding, that's electric. Like basically, the sun's electric.
Well,
that's why we need the sun so much.
Well, it sends off electromagnetic pulses, and it has solar storms. And sunlight is basically lines of hydrogen coming in contact with us. So yes, and the human body is electric as well. So the first thing I want to do, incorporate sun as part of my diet. The second thing is make sure I'm doing breathing exercises, particularly coherent heart breathing. You may say, well, what does it got to do with being successful? Well, even if you go in the Bible and you look up the word that they use for Holy Ghost, right? The word they use for ghost is Greek for the word pneuma, spelled with a P, as in pneumonia. And it means lungs. So the Holy Ghost is the holy lungs. So people be Christian all they want, but they be smoking cigarettes defiling their lungs. And that wouldn't be the Holy Ghost at that particular point, because their lungs is inflamed with smoke. So, and poison. So when you look at the word spirit, spirit means breath. When you look up the word soul, it means wind. When you look at inhalation, the opposite of inhalation is exhalation. And if you look into the scriptures for those people that are religious, it says in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, that the Lord God blew his breath into man, and man became a nefesh chayim, or a living soul. He blew his breath into man, and man became a living soul. That's interesting, because the opposite of inhalation is exhalation, but the opposite of respiration is what? Inspiration. The word spire is spira, spirit, breath. So whether it's conspiring, respiring, perspiring, spire means breath. So the opposite of inhalation is exhalation, and the opposite of respiration, when we get rid of the garbage that we breathe in, the opposite of respiration is inspiration. So we get our inspiration from breathing in deep. So everything's about breath. You walking with me? So the Holy Ghost is holy lungs. Think about it. And a tortoise lives to be over 1,000 years old because it breathes 3 times in a minute. When you get upset, you breathe irregularly and really fast. Human beings are walking around too stressed out. So you ever see a child, when you whip a child's ass, they take that deep breath, they look like they're about to die, and then when they stop, they go, because they're stressed. If we took longer breaths, we would get something out of the breath, which is called the life force, or the hadoya, as the ancient Egyptians or the Remetri used to call it. In the Indian doctrine, they call it prana. In the Chinese doctrine, they call it ki.
I do pranayama.
You feel what I'm saying? So in the Indian doctrine, they call it prana. In the Chinese doctrine, they call it ki. Some may call it chi. Right. And in Egypt, they call it sachem. But everyone agrees there's something else inside of air other than the components that we know of as far as oxygen and carbon dioxide, breathing it out. So there's something else in the air that gives us our life force. And we notice that the animals that exist that breathe deeper and shorter within a minute, lesser breaths in a minute, but deeper breaths in that minute, they live longer. There's more longevity. Well, this will open up corridors in our consciousness if we breathe more. And that's why the word spirit means breath, and the word soul means wind in Proto-Semitic languages. And then if you look up the Holy Ghost, it means holy lungs. And if you look at inspiration or respiration, we realize they're talking about the way you breathe in and the way you breathe out. So when we're talking about being motivated, we realize stress is associated with breathing too fast. Our day-to-day routine makes us stressed, so it throws off our breathing. No one has the patience to breathe no more. Think about staying still. I want you to think about staying still. How hard is it to do that? You know, if you were to ride a bike, swim, and do push-ups, you still wouldn't use more muscles than it takes to meditate or to read. What happens is the human body is made up of a little more than 600 muscles, and it takes over 300 muscles to stay still. You actually need more muscles to stay still than you need to do any application in the form of swimming or jumping jacks or push-ups combined. So we'll realize if you told the average adult, sit for just 1 minute. Whenever you attempt to meditate, you feel uncomfortable. Your legs is like, it's like you got all sorts of thoughts coming in your head. You can't clear your mind. It's like a wrestling with the mind, because actually stillness requires more muscle than activity. And so it's bad because when we were young, we was called to go in time out when we did the wrong thing. Meditation became bad when we were young because every time we did something wrong, we was condemned to isolation and silence. And so when we become adults, we associate that patience with having done something wrong. So it's hard to reverse these tasks. So watch this. So when we say, how do you execute properly? How do you execute success? How do you execute, or what is the prerequisite steps that you take when you're ambitious to accomplish something? I make sure I get enough sun. I make sure I conduct the application of what we call coherent heart breathing. So I take into account how important it is to breathe, how important it is to stay still, how important it is to get sun. And then I sit here and I purposely envision where I see myself into the future. And I spend 95% of my time in my head. I spend like 5% of my world out here amongst everybody else. And when you spend more time in your head, that's when you bear witness to who and what you are. If you tell yourself, I'm not this body, I'm not these emotions, I'm not these actions, you can do a lot more with life. But every time you entertain the idea that you're actually part of this existence on a physical scale, you're in for the biggest trick ever played on us. Because even if you deal with it from a scientific perspective, because we don't want to get spooky, right? So we look at the law of thermodynamics in a set form of conservation, we learned that energy can't be destroyed. It can be captured, it can be converted, but it can't be destroyed. So if energy can't be destroyed, the energy that you comprise of existed before you was in a physical body. And it will exist when you're outside the physical body. So the goal on this planet is to tap into the energy you, the energetic you, right? That no one bears witness to. That's the goal. The goal on planet Earth is to see if you can connect with the energy that existed before the physical body. That's the goal. And if you can connect with the energy that existed before the physical body, it's easier to materialize your conceptions. So when we're talking about executing a game plan and executing goals, one can do it better if they know they're not part of this planet as far as the illusion is concerned. Because if you know you're not part of the illusion, then you can use the components that make up this illusion to create the life that you want to lead. You walking with me? Is he able to respond still?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to make sure you was walking with me.
Yeah.
And now I could have said a number of things as far as achieving your goals and.
Hey man, you good? Go
But you know, I like to give people as much as I possibly can, and maybe some things they never thought about, because it
I feel like having
puts
that
us on a path.
I feel like having that as a foundation.
No, baby.
Come here, Lola. I feel like having that as a foundation is the building blocks or the foundational material to achieving all goals. Once you have those, I mean, your goals are just a manifestation away at that point. It's not really about the goal. And we can switch. So as I've been telling people that come into my rooms lately, I've been having the experience that I spend very little time in any human regard. Very little time. I spend most of my time in what I like to reference as the ethereal realm.
Yes.
Right? So I spend most of my time in the ethereal realm, and yo, it's crazy what you said. And this is to me. I stay home all the time, right? I don't really come out the house much. So I'm in my ethereal realm, and what's happening is I'm reconnecting with the essence that I was before I was, right? In having this human experience. I'm reconnecting with that. And I know I am because it's giving me information, what I like to call downloads. And it's allowing me to know that even in some human regard, people may reject this because it's not highly digestible to someone who's processing from a human perspective. It's not as digestive, but for me, it's instantaneous. Like it's like boom, it's direct, and I can't go against it because I'm spending time doing pranayama, and I'm sitting there and I'm breathing and I'm doing the mudras, right. and I'm connecting and I'm doing the yoga. And yes, it's harder to stay still. And another thing is, most people go to sleep on a bed opposed to going to sleep on the floor.
That's right.
And what happens when you go to sleep on a bed, the bed absorbs your entire all your muscles, right? Because your muscles, so what happens is your skeleton falls onto your muscles. So when you're in a bed that's absorbing your muscles, you never actually get rest because your skeleton is being supported by your muscles all night. That's why most people switch positions, toss and they turn, right? And then if you have sinus clog, then you won't get very good sleep because the breathing again is affected. So if you sleep on the floor, your entire skeleton will be supported by the floor and your muscles can then relax, right? So it's funny that, you know, everything you're saying in the way it correlates is crazy because I was, this is what I said, and everybody in my room knows this. I said, the only way I get to really have a true human experience as of recently is to watch other people react to the things that I've done online, right? Because I don't even like watching myself online. I don't like watching my interviews. I don't like watching certain freestyles that I did. If I do it in a moment, I'll tell people sometimes, no phones. I don't really want phones on me. I don't know why I'm like that. When it should be something that we should be saying, hold on, let me get my phone. I'm like, no. If you're here and you're fortunate enough to have this experience with me, let's just share this. Because I'm about to do something that everybody doesn't get to see. And I know I'm about to do something. I know I'm about to say something, do something that's not very human. And then I don't want it recorded that way. So it gives a lot of credence to even when we think about the alien concept, right? Or the extraterrestrial and how they hide so much, right? They're just not readily there for us to, but we know there's something greater, right? Not just to say like aliens in the sense of little green men, but just to your existence, your energy before you were in this human form, right?
Yeah.
A higher intelligence. So it's weird that in those moments, I'm like, nah, don't film me. I don't want to be filmed, right? Mm-hmm. And then I pull my freestyles from a place that's not here.
Yeah.
And they're like, yo, how do you think of that? I'm like, I'm not thinking. To think of this would be to reduce it. Mm-hmm. I'm not thinking. If I think, now I'm not on a rhythm. Like if we're dancing and you're thinking, now we're not in sync. We're not moving because you're thinking. I'm like, stop thinking and flow. Get into a flow, which is...
That's the stillness of the mind.
Man.
And let me add on to that. So now, you know, when we look at the world, a lot of us are impacted by the tilt of the planet Earth. The planet Earth is on a 23.5 degree tilt. And so what that causes us to do is to lean towards one application way more than the other. So in the western hemisphere of the planet Earth, we tend to be more analytical, and on the eastern hemisphere, we tend to be more emotional. So that you could look at the Earth and dissect it like the left cerebral hemisphere of the brain and the right cerebral hemisphere of the brain. So the left cerebral hemisphere of the brain deals with math, science, language, and reading. And then the right cerebral hemisphere of the brain deals with emotions, art, music. So those applications are on the right side. So a lot of times when people say words can't express how I feel, it's because they've yet to make the connection between the left side of the brain where the words are and expression on the right side of the brain where feeling is. And so when we look at the Earth, we see, like, for instance, if I wanted to convert somebody to spirituality on this side of the planet, I would pray, which is to speak, or I would do lectures, or I would preach, I would speak, right? But on the other side of the planet, when we want to achieve spirituality, we meditate, and we do breathing exercises, no speaking. On this side of the planet, we deal with obesity. People are overweight. And on the other side of the planet, people are malnutrition. They look skinnier. On this side of the planet, the steering wheel's on the left side. And on the other side of the planet, the steering wheel's on the right. On this side of the planet, the toilet bowl flushes clockwise. The other side of the planet is counterclockwise. In fact, on this side of the planet, we tend to lean to one side more than the other. Normally, our left leg, we lean there. We use one kidney more than the other. We use one eye more than the other. We are all influenced by the tilt of the planet Earth. Traveling helps you access the other part of your brain. You see what I'm saying? So even when we go to school, the problem is, when we go to school, it's like, okay, I got art class, right? But in art class, I'm going to remember a bunch of definitions. I got music class, right? But in music class, I'm going to learn about a bunch of composers. And if I touch the instruments, I might get in trouble, right? And hopefully for gym, we could be rewarded and actually exercise and play. So school is supposed to make you a genius, because geniuses are whole brain thinkers. All you have to do is exercise the left brain and the right brain. And then eventually neurons connect from one side of the brain to the next. And when they connect, it creates a dendrite and it sews the brain together. Whenever you make a connection from the left to the right. So the left is math, science, language, and art. Math, science, language, and reading. And then the right side is expression and music and emotions and all that. So now what happens is, we find that the inability for us to travel impedes on our ability to be whole brain thinkers. And this is why when people travel to different parts of the world, they normally come back enlightened. But it happens to either side of the sphere. Yeah. Because they lean more towards, like I said, we lean towards preaching and talking over here for upliftment, and over there is silence for upliftment, right? Yeah. And so when we look at these things, that's one. And then I also want to say, I approach greatness like training. And so when we ask what makes a person successful, or what's some of the prerequisite steps towards an ambitious brother or sister, I like to ask people, what is life's purpose, right? And we tend to believe that there's a predestined purpose for us. And technically there is, but it has to be integrated with your definition. And the reason why I say that is, let's be for real. A basketball player, does he really believe his purpose on earth was to become a basketball player? What about before basketball was created in Canada? Then what would he have been? Do you believe that your purpose on earth is to be a garbage man or a security guard or just a secretary? Like, what kind of purpose does that serve? And it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing on planet Earth. Everyone plays a role. But if we were honest, right, we make these things up. The purpose you have is the one that you establish for yourself. There's not one purpose that makes sense. Like, if my purpose on earth is to be an activist, then it means equally so as someone else's purpose to oppress people. So we have to respect the oppressor in that model. Hold on. Did y'all just catch that? Hold on, listen. Say that one more time. If my purpose on earth is to be an activist, or anyone else's, Malcolm X, Dr. King, if anybody's purpose is to be an activist, then that means equally so the oppressor has a purpose to oppress. And in that regard, we should embrace the oppressor as well. Unless we throw away the whole model. If that's not true. All right, real quick, sister, I got you. So I'm just saying, introspectively, right? Introspectively, we might have to throw away the whole model of what we think purpose is, because we probably not going to appreciate the purpose and hidden agenda of slavery, right? So we can't just say people have a purpose to uplift and people don't have a purpose to destroy people. If we don't like that, then we throw the whole shit out the window and we reestablish what purpose is. Right. And purpose is what you establish, right? Purpose is how I do believe it's people's purpose to be destructive. That's the purpose they chose to fulfill. I don't believe it's predestined. I believe on life, watch this, no matter what era you put some people in life, they will thrive, because life is about competition in some shape, form, or the other. And some of us hate the fact we have to compete. So many of us are just waiting for the world to end. So that's what we say when we're broke or we don't have nothing. Oh, money's just going to destroy anyway. Oh, you're going to die and you can't take it anyway. So you got some people who don't want to fulfill purpose,
Right.
They're not challenged. They don't want to be challenged. They don't want to compete. Oh, I don't like capitalism. So people are non-competitive, and that's all right. And they want everyone else not to be competitive. Then you got other people, like we was in the Stone Age right now. If we was in the Stone Age, I would compete in the Stone Age. And I would have the best Flintstone fucking car. My feet would be beat up. I would be riding around using my feet to drive all day. Some of us will always excel no matter what era you put us in. We will find purpose in that era to be great, to compete, and to see what we would be able to do with the potential we got in that era. If we had no electricity, I would challenge myself in the era of no electricity to be great in that era in whatever capacity is available to me. So in this era in 2021, what is your purpose, right? If it's not predefined, that means you have to establish and assert yourself in this existence. And if that be the case, are you willing not to be able to compete? And don't tell me you didn't want to compete, because watch this. All of us, and we got to go to that sister, all of us are a miracle right now. Because 777,777,777 sperm competed to that egg, to that ovum, to get here. And you was one among 700 million plus. Unless your father had a low sperm count, maybe, not 7 million plus, but 777,000, right? Unless your father had a low sperm count, maybe 400,000 or 500,000. But nonetheless, idealistically, anywhere between 400 and 700,000, you was in a race and you won that race. You come into this world and you get overwhelmed by poverty. That's a conundrum we find ourselves in. How can you win a race amongst hundreds of thousands to be born and then say you can't get out of poverty? And then say police brutality is your issue. And then people tell me I come from slaves, and I come from kings and queens. I don't understand how to reference me coming from that, because I don't feel like that. So then people get mad at me and say, so you don't come from slavery? I'm like, I don't come from slaves. I come from kings and queens. I come from emperors and empresses. You probably do come from slaves. I don't identify with that part of my lineage. How come I only can identify with the slave part of my lineage, my bloodline, but I can't identify with the royal part? Now watch reincarnation, because reincarnation is true, and I'm gonna prove it to you. Because if I smoke cigarettes and I get cancer because I smoke cigarettes, because we all know we can get cancer if we smoke cigarettes. Facts. I die 200 years later. My daughter's daughter gets cancer. And my daughter's daughter goes to the physician 200 years from now, and they ask her, do you have a history of cancer in your family? Automatically, her great-great-great-grandparent gets the blame, Brother Polight. Which means if I get the blame for something taking place 200 years from now, and I'm dead, that means I'm still alive, and I still have an impact on existence. And if that's true, how come we don't get the credit? How come we don't get the credit for our intellectual accolades, our strength, our genius? If my children's children can inherit disease from me, then my children's children can inherit mathematical genius from me and science from me. And there has to be a way to tap into that, the same way they could tap into my diabetes, the same way they could tap into my cancer, they could tap into my greatness. And now that's where this conversation goes about our purpose. You can choose to access the niggas in your family, or you can choose to access the royal bloodline in your family.
That's nuts.
And I'll let the sister ask her question. You know what I'm saying?
That's nuts. Yazzie, where you at with it? Yazzie, you got a question for Poe?
I think she bounced.
Anybody else got a question for Brother Polight?
I got one for sure.
Hold on. Let's get a female real quick, since we had a male, and then we'll go back to a male.
Y'all vibing.
Any female got a question here? Any lady, queen, goddess?
Hey. Really on the panel is King Los in the L way. They can hear you.
But I have a question.
Come on, Yazzie, with the shenanigans. We teaching. Yazzie, mute your mic, man.
He said with the shenanigans.
Come on, we teaching. Anybody got a question? Young lady?
I got a question.
It's a young lady. Let a young lady go, and then we'll go to the fellas.
I got a question.
Go ahead. Miss Jizzle, is it, or Giselle?
It's T Leach color. Los.
Oh, okay. What's up?
Yeah, nothing. But I have a question, and I appreciate this conversation. It's necessary.
I wonder, like, what advice would you give to those who are given that debate, like, between, like, where you're from and all of that type of stuff, because there's a lot of that stuff going on. What advice would you give to everybody?
When you say where you're from, you mean like ethnicity?
Yes, ethnicity. Like, especially here, considering people are fighting for, you know, their reparations, etc. We want our reparations.
I got you. If it's a political conversation, then we're going to talk about common customs, which is a calculus system that precipitates culture. By process of differentiation, integration, we're able to find the value of smaller things and factorials of those equivalents that's granting us the least adverse effects from the decisions we make. All this means is that we have predecessors, we have ancestors, we have foremothers and forefathers who attempted so many different approaches towards existence that every time they found combinations that works out for them, they stamped it in culture, and then culture becomes the subconscious brain of the people. So what this means and represents is this. We wouldn't have to say, we have to find a way to make the black dollar circulate in the community. A culture would be in place where we wouldn't have to think about it. It just would be effective. So other races don't struggle with seeing that they can keep their dollar circulating in their community because they have common customs. They have holidays, right? And here's the thing, when you are void of culture, when you practice holidays, you don't make money off of it, then it means it has nothing to do with your culture. If it is your culture, when you practice holidays, the money circulates within the confines of your culture. So we practice Christmas and we practice Thanksgiving and we practice wedding rituals, and we're not the ones making the money from the suits or from the rings or from the turkeys, then it's not really our culture. That's how you can tell it's foreign. Because when Muslims practice their culture, those prayer rugs, those oils, those incense goes right back into the same community that buys it. When Jews practice their culture and they buy challah bread to break their fast on Shabbat or Sabbath, that money stays into their community. They're not buying it from nobody else. They don't have to worry about how to keep the money in their community. Someone thought of that already for them. That's called common customs. So culture protects people from themselves, from their own destruction. That's a political standpoint when we talk about who and what we are. Then we can historically say, okay, we could look at haploid groups and we could say we migrated tens of thousands of years ago from West Africa, the bulk of us. We take a DNA test, we could identify on that level. But we have to be aware of what's called the acculturation process, which is when you adopt foreign ideas as your very own just because it's available. And this is where we are at loss for today, an acculturation process. Many of us picked Christianity inadvertently because it chose us through slavery, whether we like it or not. Had we not been espoused to slavery, had we not been kidnapped from the continent of Africa, many of us, it's very unlikely we would have been Christian, because the slave master's ritual and his spirituality deemed him Christian. And in turn, he suggested that we be Christian or subscribers of the Bible. So then we have another group of black people who are rebellious. They saw the slave master made Christian subscriptions. They saw the KKK was a denomination of Christian. We could say, well, they're not practicing right, their denomination. And so the rebellious amongst us adopted Islam, not because Islam belongs to us either, but in rebellion to Christianity, since the Quran says don't trust the Christians and don't trust the Jews. It says it in their Quran. That's not Brother Polight. It says don't trust the Gishnan Act. Okay, don't trust. It says don't trust the Christians and the Jews in the Quran. Everyone likes to say everyone should just agree and love each other, but the religions don't love each other. Each one of their gods says don't trust the other one in their scriptures. It's a fact. And when people behave like that, then everybody says, how come we can't get along, and they go against their God and they think their God is wrong, but they won't say their God is wrong, they say people are wrong. So let's say this. When we go into the Quran, it says don't trust the Christians and don't trust the Jews. Black people in America saw that their slave master was a Christian slave master. So some of us was like, dumb. Like we're gonna worship the same God of our oppressor and think we're gonna get better results. Others of us said this, I don't wanna worship the same God as my slave master. So I'm going to pick a different slave master's God, unbeknown to us.
Damn.
And we're going to pick this one just to rebel against that one. And so in either event, none of these religions belong to us. But it's an acculturation process, because guess what? I used to walk around not wanting to spit on the ground if it was a church there. Many of us believe in Adam and Eve and the apple. Whether we think we're religious or not, if I ask you who's Adam and Eve, you would know. Because we adopted these foreign ideas and cultures as if it was our very own, because we was born into a society where people already accepted it, and that's an acculturation process. So if I ask y'all this question, what the heck was black people doing before slavery? Who did they worship and who did they acknowledge? You know what's sad? We don't know the names. We don't know the names of the deities that we worshiped, the principalities that we acknowledged before we were introduced to these slave doctrines. And the reason why I call them slave doctrines is because during slavery, we were indoctrinated with these ideas. So be you Muslim, or be you Christian, or be you Jew, you wouldn't know about it here in America had you not been enslaved. So that's one aspect of it. There's a socio-political disposition that we can have about who we are as far as ethnicity is concerned. Remember, a community is common union or communion. In order for us to have a common unity, we have to have a community. And in order for us to establish ourselves as a race, according to the Black Laws Dictionary, what defines a race? The ability for a group of people to be able to identify their previous condition of servitude. We can't agree as a people what is our previous condition of servitude. The second religion gets involved. Because now it's no longer about Abraham, it's about Muhammad. And now it's no longer about Muhammad, it's about Jesus. And Muhammad is the seal of the prophets, he's the last one. And Jesus, they say ain't no one come after him. So it's confusion once we deal with religion. So we'll never be able to have a common union or a common unity or have a communion or a community so long as religion is involved. That's one thing. But we do know DNA tells us that most of us come from West Africa. But here's another thing. When we transcend the racial aspect, I'm down with being pro-black, so I don't want no one to confuse me. But I won't be limited to it. And what I mean by that is this. If you ask me where I'm from, I'm not this body, I'm not these emotions, and I'm not this action. So you ask me where I'm from the fucking stars. I'm from Regulus, the brightest star in the Leo constellation. And I can prove where my light was refracted or bent to arrive here upon my return here. I can prove this. That's why I can say I'm from the brightest star Regulus in the Leo constellation based on the date and the time that I was actually born. Because I'm a light being. Because full spectrum light solidified constitutes a melanocyte. And the darker you are, the lighter you are. And the real colored people are white people, and you can see all the veins in their body, and when they blush, you can see they become leprosy. Or they get roses right there by the cheeks. You can see them blush, and you can see all the capillaries and the blood rush to their face. They're translucent. They're colored people. They called us colored. We're light-skinned. The darker we are, the more light-skinned we are. Okay? So, that being the case, I'm not fucking from here. And I could prove this also. Let's look at this. You got what they call black synthetic matter. Black synthetic matter is a form of melanin created inside of labs to make sure that when they send something out of space, it's not set ablaze when it goes through out the atmosphere and through the Van Allen's belt or the cherubim plane, which normally sets things ablaze. So they coat rocket ships with melanin. They coat umbrellas with melanin. They coat sunglasses with lab-created melanin. And when they're not doing that, they're using the placentas from our children that they normally deny us of if we ask for it, and use it to create these type of products. Now, my thing is this. If you need melanin in order to send a dossier of material out of space, then we were created from the same matter, dark matter that is, that allows us to go out of space. So our body is probably a ship. But I don't want to get spooky because I know this shit is going to go over people's head and they start talking crazy. I'm just saying, the shit that they need to make things leave the planet, we are made up of it and others are melanin recessive. It's called black synthetic matter, so you can look it up. This is the scientifically created melanin that is used to coat material, otherwise things can't leave planet Earth. It appears we are already designed to leave planet Earth. I just want people to think about it. I just want people to think about it. So there's two answers. You either politically somebody or astrally is somebody. I'm picking the astral. Unless I have to get into political conversations, then I could be black and all that shit, right? But if we just having an intellectual conversation, I don't identify with all of this because it's a limitation. I'm gonna tell you that what you're seeing is the best way you can interpret light. Like people say you can't break down color to a blind person, and that's a lie because color is mathematics. So for instance, the cones in your eye only interpret green at 90-degree angles. Every color is interpreted at an angle. So you can interpret angles and you can express to a blind person at angles in which things can be interpreted. So you thinking about the colors, so I get that. Oh, blind people can't see colors. But if we talk about the mathematics of colors, then we know each color comes in at a different angle. We know blue is the fastest color in the color spectrum. We know we don't, and the color you see is the one that's rejected. That's another thing we need to know. So the sky is not blue. We know that blue is just the fastest color in the color spectrum. Space isn't black. It's actually green. The sun isn't yellow. It's actually black. If you took a picture of the sun with your camera, you'll see a black circle there.
Hold on, 2 seconds. Those that was in the room with me about a week ago, and I was staring up at the sun, and I said, hold on, y'all. I said, the sun is black. Was anybody in the room with me when I said that?
I was.
All right. The downloads. I said, the sun is black. It's completely black. You know what I'm saying? And even from sun gazing, I've seen that many times. After reaching in like 25 plus minutes of sun gazing, I could see that the sun was black.
Yeah, because now you're slowing down or speeding up your vibration, so you can't be tricked by the illusion.
Right.
So it's nothing but illusions based on us.
And then I can see the matrix around it glitching. I can see the trees glitching, like going from green to like glitching.
Yeah.
But I see the sun is black, and I see like,
because all this shit is fake,
it's
man. It's not
glitching.
real. And once you know it's not real, then you can be successful on this plane.
Right.
Once you know it's not real, the people who believe it's real, they get caught up all the time.
Go ahead. What y'all was saying? Next question.
I got a question. And I'm glad you mentioned that real quick because.
So say your name.
Peace. My name is Virgo. Dash stuff. But regardless of that, so I be in the city chopping it up.
We lit in here.
With cats, they got bread, and the whole thing is all about like chopping up.
Where we not lit at?
Say it again.
My bad.
Say it a little bit louder. We were saying we was lit. The room was lit, Virgo.
Yeah.
Go ahead, bro.
We on IG too, so everybody's we touching.
We chopping up about success,
Yes.
manifestation. Other cats be talking about like experimenting as well with like DMT, mushrooms to get ahead. And I just want to see what your opinion is on that, basically.
Okay.
DMT, mushrooms, and drugs.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm not against people using Kickstarters into their consciousness, but I also want people to understand this, that your body has the ability to establish the same high from anything that you introduce to it, because whatever exists outside of us exists inside of us in certain proportions. So the goal would be, how can I raise the amount of proportions to establish the same high? So for instance, if you were to be in silence and stay in blackness for at least 72 hours without talking and submerge yourself in blackness, your body would produce roughly 24 to 25 grams of DMT naturally without you having to consume it on the outside of you. Your body could produce that. You just got to be submerged in blackness, uninterrupted with no communication. Scientific study shows, you can look it up, just use the same words I'm using and Google it and you'll find it. DMT can be produced naturally, being submerged in darkness, not talking for long periods of time, so melatonin can just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. And this is why when you read scriptures, you find out that it's always when someone's in a mountain somewhere with no sirens and no disruption, no distraction, they get enlightened. They wind up being in tune with some being that sounds like they're not part of this planet, because evidently they traveled. And we think to travel, you have to get inside of some mechanism and move. You can travel and remain in the same place at the same time. You feel me? This is quantum mechanics or quantum entanglement. And it'll intertwine with science's string theory.
Hold on one second, Mr. So my question, so basically what you're saying is that it's tying into what they're doing, but as far as getting like an enhancement to do it or taking an actual thing, we could do it in ourselves basically.
That's correct.
Doing that, and in doing that, you can contact and get like a higher understanding at the same time as well.
That's right. That's right. You don't need to use drugs or of any sort to achieve your goal. It's not that you can't. You can leverage opportunities from things that you introduce to your body, but the goal is never have to be dependent on it, because your body can produce it under normal circumstances or applications or rituals. So like for instance, the high we chase out of life has been stolen from us because we get underpaid. So for instance, when a woman breastfeeds, she produces what's called oxytocin. It's called the bonding hormone, right? And this bonding hormone by nature suggests to her intuitively to protect whatever created the opportunity. It's also produced in men, but not the breast milk aspect. So when a woman breastfeeds, the hormones are instructions. Anytime you hear the word hormone, if I have cortisol hormones being produced, that means I'm stressed. So that hormone is giving me instructions to probably forget what's going on or to block things out or don't recall it. So like people that are victims of extreme rape or abuse, they probably forget certain parts of their life or during the abuse because the hormone tells them this is too much to bear, forget about what's going on. So you have the hormone insulin. When insulin is secreted from the pancreas, insulin tells the cells to open up their walls and allow blood sugar in the form of glucose to enter into the cell and to metabolize. So when we have a problem producing insulin in the form of diabetes, that means that there's too much blood sugar in the blood, which destroys nerves because glucose is destructive. And therefore, the cells are not allowing their walls to open up because they're not following instructions. And this is what's crazy about diabetic medicines because they give you like 14 different ones. And those medicines are coming from cows and pigs. So you're taking cows and pigs instructions. And that's why your body's constantly rejecting it. And that's why you got to be on pills for almost the rest of your life until they keep cutting things. But that's another conversation, right? So, yeah. Let me make sure I stick on because I be bugging out. Let me stay focused before y'all go on that, right? So real quick. All right, go ahead. Okay, I got you. I'm gonna just finish this thing here, right? So the thing is, when we talking about instructions and hormones, I was talking about oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. It gives you a high. It gives you a chill up your body. It gives you a chill up your spine. It also tells you whatever caused this, protect the interests of that. So like, let's say a woman breastfeeds, she becomes more protective of her child. It's set like that by nature. When they don't breastfeed, it's a possibility she become less protective. That's just nature. Or she could just be more protective. Even if she's protected, she'd be more protective if she breastfeeds. What's this got to do with life? Because I said they cheat us out the high by undercompensating us. That's what I said. So let's do this again. When does oxytocin also get created? Chemically, oxytocin is created also when people use crack. It's also similar in composition when or produced or summoned when people use cocaine. We also find oxytocin being produced when you find money out of nowhere on the street. If you ever found money on the street, it automatically became addictive and you kept looking for money every day of the week because you just knew I did it once, I could do it again. It's an addiction because oxytocin is produced just like when you use crack, just like when you use cocaine. It's produced it's produced when you find money.
That's your question within that. Is that the same thing with like the casino?
Yes, the whole.
And that's why people keep going back and going
for
back.
hours and hours and hours.
Okay.
It's a high you get. So you also get this same high when you find money. You get the same high when you get a return on your investment. You get the same high when you work hard and you actually get rewarded for it. Now watch what happens. Working is obligatory. We have to work to make money. What happens when you work your ass off, you get your check and you look at it like, this shit can't even pay my bills. I'm living check to check. You don't get a high from that. You're supposed to get a high when you get compensated from what you do. You also get a high when you donate. You ever gave something to somebody you didn't really want to give it to them? You ain't really have that much. You was kind of struggling yourself, but then you gave it to them anyway. And then you saw how it impacted them. And it made you feel good. You got that chill up your spine. That chill up your spine is called oxytocin. And in fact, it made you want to revisit that feeling again because the human body is designed that when you get that feeling, you want to secure the interest of that feeling and you want to make it recurring. So whatever causes that high, you want it over and over. Now, working should give us a natural high, and we should all want to work provided we're properly compensated. When you're not properly compensated, you need to now beseech synthetic forms of that high in the form of crack, in the form of cocaine, in the form of cigarettes, because you're overcompensating because life no longer gives you a high because it's no longer satisfying. So we have to find, that's why being an entrepreneur is so much more important in this day and time, so you can get your true reward. And I always say, one of my sayings is, you can never get paid what you're worth, only what you negotiate. What could someone really give me that I'm worth? it's coming from Brother Polight. If it's coming from King Los, it's a King Los product. If it's coming from you, you put your name on it. No one in the world got that thing from you because they only get it from you. So what's the price on that? There's no value. So you can never get paid what you're worth. You only can get paid what you negotiate. And they always underpaying us. So they steal the high that we're supposed to get out of life. Because when you get compensated properly and oxytocin is produced, you want to keep working. You're going to want to be a workaholic because you love the vibe of being compensated properly, because you get the same stimulus you get from crack and cocaine from working hard, or from investing and getting a return, or from finding money, or from being a philanthropist and donating to people. You get a high from these things. But if you're not giving to people enough to realize your high, if you're not investing and getting returns, if you're working and being underpaid, then the only way you can get your high is through synthetic forms of the same. And then that leads to addiction. And guess what? If you keep getting your high from synthetic forms of the same, eventually you get depleted of the ability to produce it yourself.
Right.
Now you need it. So now you're walking around with some zombies. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Yaz.
5%. I wanted to ask King Los a question because I learned something from him the other day. I saw him on my boy Lil Ride Live. King Los was swagged out with his outfit, but when he was rapping,
Per usual.
he was coming from an energy of positive peace. And you know, like a lot of people look at Los like, oh, he's just a rapper, he's an entertainer. I didn't become a fan of Los because he was a rapper or entertainer. I came on Clubhouse. I was already a fan of Los music, but when I came on Clubhouse, I met the real Los. I was like, wait, this dude is phenomenal. This dude is a genius.
True story.
He's a nerd. He's smart. He's intelligent. You can learn so much from him if you shut up and listen. So when I
Say that
saw
again.
Los the other day on Lil Ride, he was freestyling. Now look, bro, like I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait, look at this outfit Los got on. This boy is a fool. He dressed the death, killing them on a high level. But when he opened his mouth, I'm coming, sir. I know y'all close. Give me 1 second. I'm speaking knowledge. I got you. Coming now, sir. Let me ask my question. I got you. He was speaking in his rap some shit that people needed to hear. And my question to my bro, Los, what keeps you on a high level of vibration where you're not entertaining nothing negative? Like, how do you stay up there? Because I want to be on that level one day, bro.
Right.
And when I watch you in these rooms, dude, you's amazing. You can sell a room out in 2 seconds. We're going to have from 100 to 1,000 people in that room within 1 hour. But
Facts.
how do you keep your energy levels so positive where people are interested in what you have to say?
Yeah.
And I love you for that, dude.
Hey,
And I learn so much from you every day.
Hey, thanks, Yazzie. So, what I was just talking to Poe from about right before we decided, I just decided to spontaneously hop on Clubhouse because I've been telling Poe for maybe a couple months now. Like, yo,
Yes.
you got to get on Clubhouse. Y'all hear the way this man was speaking? Like, I have constant access to this. This is one of the people who helped me become who I am. So, some of the things that I say, I remix it. I ain't gonna lie. It's a Polight original and a King Los remix. You know, so I get a lot from bro, right? So, but one of the things I was telling him that I was inspired to do, because he's about to teach me how to do these courses, is how to activate the advanced mechanisms that manipulate the constructs. So Yazzie, that's how I do it. The construct is 80% of the people's thinking around us. Like for instance, if we was in a store, department store, and let's say we was in Macy's, and 80% of the people in Macy's decided, y'all niggas ain't making it out this exit. We'd have a damn problem in that store. Cause then we would become the few. So whenever we think in an advanced way to activate the mechanisms, the advanced mechanisms, we become the few, okay? We become the minority in that room. And so we out here in the world, dealing with the limited capacity of the way other people think constantly. And that's one of the things that I realized. I'm not up against myself. I'm up against the way all these limited people act and interact with one another. And by some chance, they feel or think that I'm going to interact in the same frequency as them. But if I can activate the advanced mechanisms, then I would never deal in my human form, which is more privy to the emotional, the vulnerable state, the emotional state, and only the intellectual capacity of the environments that I'm in. So for instance, I grew up in Baltimore City. My hood, my block, many people didn't make it off my block, right? But I never thought in the capacity of a person that was in that space. I always knew or projected or saw myself outside of that space. So I already was using something from my higher self to project myself through consciousness outside of the perspectives of the people who were right around me. So we could be looking at the same thing, but I'm seeing it from a whole nother perspective in a whole nother way.
That's right.
I'm interpreting it in a whole nother fashion.
Real talk.
So when you engage that obstacle and you fall and you look at that falling as failure, I'm looking at that falling as the rain that flower needs to grow. So when it's raining outside, now I'm gonna show you how the whole perspective changes. When it's raining outside, everybody's sad. I'm happy. Because I'm like, the trees, everything's getting what it needs. So my whole perspective was always different. So I never was saddened or stopped or I did get stumbled and make falls, but I never looked at that as failure, and I never saw failure as something that I could completely absorb. Even if I stumbled, even if you told me no, even if you said it'll never happen, even if it felt like it was never going to happen, I still felt like, yeah, but it still might happen.
That's right.
So that's how I stay in this state, and honestly, like, I don't stress anything, and I create. And now that I've really tapped into who I am and who I was before I am who I am now, there's really absolutely nothing that I can't do. And I don't, you know.
That clubhouse be crazy.
Say what?
Give a piece of advice on top of it.
I want to say something to you folks before I go, because my phone is
All right, go ahead, Yazzie, because your phone about to die.
Al put me on vegan. Al put me on all positive energy. And one thing about Al, since he mentioned you to me, dude, like, I was already a big, huge fan. Outside of who you are, outside of an artist.
Thank you.
When I knew you was an entrepreneur and you had the mind you had, I was calling people. I'm like, y'all gotta come to Clubhouse. Y'all thinking he's a rapper. This nigga is an entrepreneur. This nigga is a scientist. This nigga on some whole other. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's what we all put here to be. Yeah.
That nigga Al puts you on a whole nother level, Los.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, I commend you for the people you choose as friends.
Thank you, Yazzie.
Respect you and they value you on a high level.
Thank you.
There's not many people in this industry that can have real life friends that say, you know what, my boy changed my life and my mindset. And that's what I love about you, Los.
Yeah.
It ain't about who you follow,
Yeah.
who friends with you. It's about people that practice the energy that you practice.
Yeah.
That shows leadership.
Yeah.
And I respect you for that.
I respect you. Thank you so much, Yazzie. You know you so special. Thank you.
Hey, Los, I would love to tap in and chime with you. And tap in. I got a question for Brother Polight.
Who's speaking? Can you say your name?
This is Brother Jamal Milton.
Okay.
I'm somebody priest out of the Shrine of Ma'at, based out of here in Harlem, New York.
Okay.
We had a great conversation the other day in reference
Yeah,
to,
Jamal, I remember you. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm a long-time follower of Brother Polight. We have similar circles that we run through. My peers, Brother Jabario Saze and Sister Nico Saze, Sanetta, all of them. So
Okay.
I wanted to ask Brother Polight in reference to what we were discussing for about 3 hours in reference to flat Earth and hollow Earth. I would love to hear his views on that. Because even though I'm a Chemite, I'm one of the few that entertains the conversation of flat Earth. I've been laughed at by peers and things of that nature, but I would love to hear, where he comes from with it, and see what he can add into it.
No doubt. So as far as the flat earth is concerned, I get the construct, and I believe that it's a perspective that could be accepted, but I would sound like I'm double talking, because I'm going to tell you that I see this as a holographic universe. And the way that the Remetu or the ancient Egyptians described creation, they identified Earth as an accretion disk. And that is something that's like a composite between flat and circle. So it would be like a stretched oval sideways. And so if we looked at a projector and how the mechanics of a projector works, the stipulation is if we